What's the funniest secret someone has revealed under anesthesia? My boyfriend had an endoscopy, and when he started coming out of sedation, he kept whispering, "I need to tell you something urgent." The nurse smiled knowingly. "They get pretty emotional after sedation. Nothing to worry about," she said. After she left, he held my hand tightly and looked around like he thought someone was watching us. "I have to confess," he whispered. "I'm actually an undercover spy. Dating you has compromised my entire operation." I tried not to laugh as he kept glancing at the door like someone might be listening. When the doctor walked in with discharge papers, my boyfriend's eyes went wide. He frantically tapped his nose and made strange hand gestures. "That's my handler," he whispered way too loudly. "He's using medical cover. Very clever." The doctor raised an eyebrow but continued reviewing instructions while my boyfriend kept winking and responding with bizarre code phrases. On the drive home, he suddenly gasped and pointed at a pet store. "Emergency extraction protocol. Pull over now." Before I could stop him, he'd stumbled inside and returned with a goldfish in a plastic bag. "This is Agent Bubbles," he announced solemnly. "My replacement. He'll complete my mission." 6 months later, Agent Bubbles still swims in our living room. My boyfriend claims to remember nothing, but he still refuses to make eye contact with his gastroenterologist.
What secret did your family use to destroy you? I never thought family could betray you like this. But here's my story. My cousin Alex and I were basically brothers growing up. We did everything together. Family trips, birthdays, we even shared our first car. He was the one person I trusted completely. Then, our grandma passed away. That's when everything changed. He started whispering to the family, painting me as the troubled one. "Remember when he disappeared for months?" he'd say, conveniently leaving out that I was in rehab, fighting to get clean. Something he'd promised to keep secret. The family bought his stories. When the will was read, Alex walked away with everything. The house, the savings, even grandma's antique collection she'd promised me. I confronted him outside the lawyer's office. He looked me dead in the eye, smiled, and said, "It's just business, cousin. You'll understand someday." I struggled for years after that, while he enjoyed the life that should have been partly mine. Posted pictures from vacation homes, flaunted his success. Then karma hit. Market crashed. His businesses failed. That's when I got the message. "Hey, I know it's been years, but family is family, right? I need a loan." I played along, watched him beg, let them think help was coming. His final message, "You're really gonna do this?" I smiled, remembering his words from years ago. "It's just business, cousin. You understand?"
What's the moment that made you hate someone you once loved? I divorced my husband in 2010. Our son Charlie was 11, and the split crushed him. His dad moved 3 states away for a fresh start with some woman from his gym. Then came the Disneyland promise. It was a Sunday call. Charlie was on our leather couch talking to his dad on speaker when his father said, "Hey buddy, for your 12th birthday, it's gonna be just you and me at Disneyland. How's that sound?" Charlie's whole world lit up. He got a Mickey Mouse calendar, using his allowance to buy a red marker. Every night he crossed off a day, counting down. He made a Disneyland fund jar for quarters from chores. "Mom, do you think Dad will let me buy him one of those Mickey hats with his name on it?" On his birthday, he was up at 5 a.m. He'd packed his little blue suitcase a week before. I'd found him sleeping next to it twice. By 7 a.m., he sat by the window in his goofy shirt, waiting. Dad said early, Mom. Hours passed, then dinner time. "Maybe he got lost, Mom. His phone probably died." "That happens, right?" I called, straight to voicemail. A month later, my sister sent a Facebook screenshot. There was my ex, smiling at Cinderella's castle, with his new wife and her kids. Charlie found out at school. Some kid showed him the post. He came home, walked straight to his room, and took down that Mickey Mouse calendar. Never mentioned Disneyland again. What's your I played the long game revenge story? I had this friend in our weekly dinner group who always pushed for equal splits on the bill. He'd casually order the $80 Wagyu steak while the rest of us got $16 burgers, then pile on fancy cocktails. Always top shelf, always multiple rounds. Meanwhile, I'd sit there nursing my single beer. When the bill came, he'd instantly grab it and say those dreaded words, "Let's keep it simple, guys. Just divide by 5. He'd say it so confidently, like he was doing us all a favor. I'd end up paying $95 for my $22 meal, but I never said a word. Instead, I got a small black notebook from the dollar store. Every dinner, I'd jot down what he ordered versus what everyone else got. The price differences, the extra rounds, the group appetizers that only he ate. 6 months of this went by. Page after page filled up with numbers that made my blood boil. Then came that Saturday night at our usual spot. He was in rare form, ordering the chef's special premium sides, 3 different cocktails. As the bill arrived, he started his usual speech about keeping things fair. That's when I did it. Without saying anything, I pulled out my notebook and set it right in front of him. I've never seen someone's expression change so fast. He stared at that notebook like it was a live snake. The next week, before anyone even ordered, he quietly asked for separate checks.
"What's the most expensive mistake your boss ever forced you to make?" The warehouse manager complained we forklift operators were inefficient with our routes, which was actually just us avoiding empty shelves and blocked areas. So he implemented a new system: follow specific, pre-mapped routes with no deviations or face disciplinary action. One Tuesday morning, our biggest client placed a rush order that needed to ship within 2 hours or they'd cancel their $5 million annual contract. The CEO himself called down to emphasize how critical this was. I headed to the storage area only to discover a broken water pipe had flooded the official route. I called the manager. "Sir, there's a water leak blocking the route to section H. Can I take the back way around?" "Absolutely not. Follow the approved routes only. That's why we have them. But we'll miss the deadline if..." "Are you questioning company policy? Just follow the procedure." So I did exactly that. I followed the long route, waited for maintenance to clear the path, documented every delay as required, and finally retrieved the items. We missed the deadline by 18 minutes. The client canceled their contract that afternoon. The next day, the manager called an emergency meeting about operational flexibility after the CEO discovered his routing system had cost us our biggest account. Sometimes, following the rules to the letter is the best revenge. What's the most satisfying table tables-turned moment you've witnessed in court. I was working at the courthouse when I saw a mechanic get sued for destroying a customer's Ferrari, and his response was so brilliant that the case collapsed in minutes. The plaintiff was a wealthy businessman who claimed his mechanic had intentionally ruined his $300,000 Ferrari after a payment dispute. Security footage showed the mechanic working on the car for almost an hour. Witnesses testified they saw him handling engine components. Shortly after, the businessman drove off, but the engine broke down completely. Repairs would cost $80,000. The evidence seemed overwhelming. The mechanic was on camera, had motive, and the timing was perfect. The businessman presented oil analysis confirming contamination and tire pressure logs showing tampering. Throughout this, the mechanic sat calmly, occasionally whispering to his lawyer who did nothing during the prosecution's case. When it was the mechanic's turn, his lawyer asked just one question. "Did you ever touch the car that day?" "No, sir," he replied. "I saw him draining his own oil the night before. He planned to scam me, so I pretended to work while documenting everything. The camera angle doesn't show I never touched anything." He then produced footage showing the businessman tampering with the car himself. The judge dismissed the case immediately. The businessman now faces insurance fraud charges.
Who is your real-life superhero? When I was a kid, I used to believe my mom when she told me it was cool to have cerebral palsy. I always knew I wasn't like the other kids, as everyone could walk and run normally except me. Somehow, my mom still convinced me that all the other kids were jealous, and the canes I used to walk were badass. When I got to high school, it all changed. The teachers could only protect me from the jokes and ridiculing for so long, and eventually, I met Brad. He was the principal's son, and was coincidentally in all of my classes. Brad pretty much made it his life's mission to make fun of me as much as possible. He would pretend to push my canes when I tried to get up from my desk, and I had to go to the school nurse multiple times from falling. He of course never got in trouble, because all the teachers were afraid of him. My parents weren't rich, so it took them a while to save up for special shoes designed for me. Well, the first day I wore them to school, Brad took them from the changing room during gym class and threw them in the garbage. Nobody told me where they were until it was too late, and I never saw those shoes again. My math teacher, who hated our principal, got word of this and decided this had gone on far too long. He pulled Brad into his classroom, and the entire school could hear him shouting. The principal actually fired him for yelling at his son, and when he came to pack up his things, he gave me a new pair of shoes he bought for me.
Parents of killers, what happened? We started hearing my son was being bullied constantly in school because of a huge birthmark on his shoulder. And after one day when this bully tried to cut the birthmark off, we took him out of school. Unfortunately, this same jerk somehow knew our address and would often wait outside our house just to taunt him. We tried going to the police, but they refused to do anything as they didn't consider it a serious matter. We didn't see him for a while, so we thought it was over. But then this kid found out my son had been named MVP on his soccer team. The next day, he decided to throw a brick through our living room window and climb into our house with the intention of hurting my son. He got into our house and started searching for him while calling out his name. What he didn't know is that my son, who was scared shitless, was thankfully in his room with his older brother, who happened to be holding my cocked firearm. He was now upstairs, kicking open each door, calling out how bad he was going to hurt him. He got to my son's room and flung open the door, ready to do who knows what. He was immediately met with 2 rounds straight to the chest. My sons were 13 and 14 at the time and weren't charged. It was ruled as self-defense. What's the best revenge you've ever gotten? My little brother was constantly coming home from school with new cuts and bruises. When I asked him about it, he would just say they were playing football at lunch, but I knew he was absolutely not the type to play football. His school was next to mine, and at lunch I went over to see what was really going on. As expected, he wasn't anywhere to be seen by the kids playing football, but after a few minutes I did find him reading in one of the corners. Then, as I was leaving, I saw my ex-girlfriend and her best friend go up to him. They started making fun of him and even snatched his book out of his hands, ripping it in half. Then she even went as far as to kick him a few times. I immediately put a stop to it and told her to get lost. We went home that day and told our parents, but before they went to the principal about it, I thought of something. The next day, I took him to the ice cream shop where she worked and told him to go get some. He's deathly allergic to gluten and dairy, so after he asked for it to be specially made, I knew she would try something. I stood in a corner where I could see her making it and managed to get a video on my phone of her mixing in milk and wafers to the bottom. This would have killed him. I showed the manager, and she now has a criminal record and will never work with food again in her life.